Hi, it's Jessica at playitforwardtherapy.net. I hope you all have had a good week. Today, I thought I would talk about how to keep kids' attention during your online therapy sessions. So, if you've ever wondered, I have some kids on my caseload that I don't think would be a good match for telehealth, or I'm not sure how I'm going to be able to keep this child's attention during my online session, then definitely this topic is for you. I have had several kiddos on my caseload from all ages. So, from little ones like toddlers, all the way up to school age to high school kids. And so, I wanted to share with you some of the tips that I have found to be helpful when it comes to keeping kids entertained and engaged and attentive during your online OT sessions. And so I've organized it in four different types of strategies. So the four tips and strategies I have for you are number one, to manage expectations, number two, to engage. And so I'll talk about some strategies that I use to help engage kids online. Three, the entertainment factor. And four, how to experiment with the tech and digital tools to really enhance your online sessions. So, the first thing you're going to want to think about is before you even start. So, setting up for success when it comes to attention and engagement, and that is managing expectations. So, when you're working in pediatrics, you're always going to have two clients. You're going to have the parent or the caregiver as well as the child. And so, it's really important to help manage expectations. And by expectations, I mean helping them prepare. So, helping them know what to expect. So, some examples might be being prepared for a session and having the materials ready, giving a parent kind of an idea of how much time and what level of involvement you need for them. Definitely for the littler kids, you might need more parent involvement and it might take more time and hands on versus if you're seeing an older kid, maybe the parent is just going to check in, or maybe the older child doesn't necessarily want their parent or caregiver there the whole time. So you want to manage the expectations in terms of what to expect, how much time that you're looking for them to be online, when the session starts, when it'll stop, as well as if something does go wrong, how you can keep kids engaged. So, for example, part of it is the connectivity. So, with online therapy, there's always the issue that you might get disconnected. And so, part of managing expectations is being able to prep your families. Well, if this happens, if we get disconnected, then no problem. This is what you can do. You can give me a call, we can log off and log in again. So just make sure that you provide some strategies for them so they don't panic and then come back stressed if you lose connectivity. The other thing is to manage the expectations of the child. So it's the same thing like in real life sessions as it is in telehealth sessions to manage a child's expectations of what they can expect during the session. So, for example, that might be setting up a schedule, whether it be written or a visual schedule or an interactive schedule. Also, having some predictable routines. Some children like to be able to start the session in a certain way or end it. And by knowing what to expect, that can really help keep kids engaged and attentive because it lessens their anxiety because they know what to expect. And you also want to make sure that it's positive. So even if you have to start the beginning of your sessions with not exactly their immediate goal that they need to work on, you're going to start developing that rapport, making it fun, making it positive, then their expectation is that whenever they have a therapy session with their OT, that they can expect it to be fun. So that's the first tip is expectations. The second tip I have for you is engagement. So these are some ideas that you can do to engage your kids to keep them attentive. And sometimes engagement is going to take some time to build up to. So we do have kiddos in the clinic that initially when we start therapy, their engagement might even be fleeting and their engagement might just be a few seconds. And then gradually as we develop rapport, we get to know each other, we learn the child's interests, we know what motivates them, then they're going to become more engaged with us. But when you're online and you're doing a telehealth session, it's important that you bring it all that you have. So you want to come to the session being lively and you yourself engaged and focused and attentive because you have to be fully engaged in order to expect your kids to be fully engaged. And I know that sounds basic, but sometimes when you come across the screen, you might have to up your energy a little bit because just the very nature of being on camera or on screen, it has kind of a dampening effect with your energy. And you also, in order to really help with the engagement piece of thing, is not only you being engaged, but it's to capture that child's attention. So there are some different strategies that you can use to capture a child's attention, and you really want to engage in what they're interested in. So, what is their favorite color? What are they going to see first? What types of characters do they like? So, one example is I had a little boy, he was in preschool, and whenever we did an online session, he would either hide under the table or he would hide behind the curtains. And if I ever presented anything new, then he would hide behind the curtains and or run away. And he was the type of child that the expectation strategy really helped, where we always had a predictable schedule. So, as he got to know me and as he got used to the teletherapy sessions, I saw more engagement because he knew what to expect. And I knew that he was really into PJ Masks. And so I would use that as a strategy to help get his visual attention initially. So when I would come online, before I set up my session, I would set up my background. And so I would pick PJ Masks. And so I would set up a virtual background. So then when I turned it on, he would see me and it would be like, oh my gosh, Miss Jessica is with Catboy, or Miss Jessica is with my favorite characters, and the background was bright. And so that really helped get his initial interest in the session just visually. The other way to make sure that you keep your kids engaged is to make it interactive. So sometimes parents will say, we can't do a telehealth session because my kid is sitting in front of the computer screen. They're already doing distance learning. We don't want to be sitting in front of the computer. Well, I think you need to educate too the parents that for OT as motor therapists that we're not going to be sitting in front of the computer. So we are going to be moving, we're going to be active. There might be some times when we might be sitting and doing some fine motor work or handwriting, but we can definitely move. And so, as we all know, just being able to get that child in that right level of regulation and modulation, just like in the clinic, sometimes you're going to have to address that first in telehealth. And so, you can keep kids more engaged if you're addressing their sensory needs first. And that means maybe doing some movement to get them more alert, and maybe doing some exercises to just sort of liven up their activity level. Some children are going to be on the opposite end where you're going to call in and they are upregulated. So you're going to have to maybe start with some deep breathing or some heavy pressure or proprioceptive input to bring them to that just right level so they can engage with you for whatever it might be that you might want to work on. The other tip for engagement is communication. And so all kids communicate in their own way, and some are more visual, some are more auditory, some they really benefit from visual cues such as writing a schedule or drawing the schedule or even sign language, using sign language throughout. So part of engagement when I'm working with a toddler, for example, who's nonverbal and learning signs, I basically have four signs that I use. So one example might be, oh, do you want more? So if I'm playing a video and they're really into the video and the video stops, I'm going to really quickly say, do you want more? And see if I can get some engagement that way. Because even though they're not verbal, they're still able to communicate their needs. And when they see you responding to their needs, even though you're not in the same room and they're not verbal, then that's going to really help engage them. The other sign that I often like to use is we're all done, or my turn, or your turn, and body language, just, even leaning into the camera, coming forward, pulling back is a way of communicating as well. So even though you're not together in person, these are ways that you can, use your body and use your communication style to keep that child engaged. The other thing that is also fun too with little kids, if they can keep their attention in front of the screen, this is a little bit down the line, is imitation. So if they're doing something, then you imitate them, almost like a mirror, and see if they notice. So that's just a fun thing to try. And once you're imitating them, then later they might be more likely to imitate you. So that's the second tip is engagement. My third tip for keeping kids' attention online is entertainment. So not that you have to be telling jokes or, super entertaining, but you definitely want to bring your best self forward and use your therapeutic use of self. Be lively. Think about what they really enjoy. For example, with a smaller crowd, I like to sing songs and I will like to use puppets. So, for example, I have, this little guy, my dog Spot, and I'll use Spot. I've used him for feeding, where maybe I feed him things, or maybe Spot has a marker and Spot's going to pick out a certain color. Well, what color should Spot pick? So I'll use my little puppets in a lot of different ways to help with engagement. The other thing too, you can also use what the child has at home. So if they have a favorite stuffed animal, then maybe you could incorporate the stuffed animal with a movement game, for example, or sing songs with the stuffed animal, or the stuffed animal could be used as a prop where you jump over the stuffed animal, bounce them on your head. So you can be silly. Like it's okay to be silly and it's okay to be fun. And so that's kind of what I mean by saying entertainment to keep kids engaged. The other aspect of attention and engagement is the tech. So when it comes to telehealth, this is definitely one of the challenging things with telehealth is a lot of therapists are like, I am awesome in person. I can engage. I have all these ideas, but then how do I translate my clinical skills online with the technology? And so this is the fourth E, which is to experiment with the tech, but also to practice and to gain experience. So the first thing that I would always do, you want to check your tech in terms of the sound and in terms of the visual clarity. So I was doing a screening online with a 6-year-old child, and it was a handwriting screening, and I couldn't figure out why things were so foggy and so fuzzy. So first of all, I make sure that I clean my screen with like a glasses cleaning wipe and make sure your camera is clear. But it turns out on his end, their camera on their laptop just had all these little fingerprints. So I think and smudges and grease stains, and so that's why things weren't really showing up clearly when they were trying to see me and vice versa. So after I cleaned my camera, after they cleaned their camera, then it was easier to see. You also want to think about the lighting too, because if it looks like you're sitting in a dark room, that is not really very inviting. So you want to make sure that you set up the tech properly, and that can help engage your clients because you look like you're in a warm and inviting space. As far as the tech aspects, it also depends on your platform that you're using. So there's a whole range of different tech tips that you can use to help engage. So one of the things that I like to do is I mentioned it earlier is I like to change my background. So for example, I had a little girl and an early intervention and we were working on crawling. And so their best setup was to take the laptop and they would put me and the laptop at the top of the stairs and the mom was at the bottom of the stairs, and so I would be at the top of the stairs on the computer singing, and I would also change my background. So this little girl really liked dogs and really liked kitty cats, and so I changed my background to a really bright blue background with doggies and kitties, and she immediately noticed that. And plus, I was there. And so I used that as a motivator to help her come up the steps. And what was really nice is that because the camera's at the top of the steps, I could see the mom and I could see the parent. And so I could also give her some tips and I could coach her with how to help her daughter's mobility. We also talked about different safety issues. I did quick environmental assessments. So it was really nice to be able to use that aspect of the tech to engage her, to motivate her, and to be able to get into some nice gross motor skills. So, the other things that you want to think about are being able to make it really interactive and hands on. So, if a child is able to share your mouse control or they are able to spin a spinner, for example, you'll want to look into digital tools and different types of platforms that will allow you to do that because that will really help with engagement. Rather than having your child be so passive on the other side, they can actually participate. If you aren't able to share remote control, for example, with a spinner game, then what I would do is I say, okay, tell me when to start, and they tell me when to start, tell me when to stop, and then stop. And so they're still feeling like they can control and interact with the game on the screen, even though I'm technically the one that's operating the mouse. So those are just some tips that you can use. So just to wrap up, the four tips are to manage your expectations, to engage your kiddos, and to entertain them, as well as to experiment and gain experience with the tech. So, if you have any ideas or strategies that you have used to keep your kids' attention online and to keep them engaged, feel free to post them in the comments. I think we are all learning, what's best and what's best practice and how we can make telehealth as fun as in-person sessions. So feel free to share your ideas and comment below. So thanks again for joining me, and I hope to see you next time.